They called Naomi Carter to the stage and then told her to wait. The applause thinned so fast it felt like the room took a breath and held it. Stage lights warmed the blue curtain. Parents sat forward with their phones ready. On the table beside the podium, framed certificates lined up like promises. Naomi had been told her name would be read for outstanding academic achievement. She stepped into the light with her hands steady and her chin up. Somewhere near the front, her father leaned in his seat, a smile tucked into the corner of his mouth. Ms. Reynolds, Naomi's English teacher, lifted the certificate and spoke into the microphone with a careful tone. "We need to pause," she said. "There may have been a mix-up with the scores." The sound in the auditorium changed. Not silence exactly, more like a hush with a heartbeat. Naomi stopped an arm's length from the podium. She did not argue, she did not reach. She looked at the frame, then at Ms. Reynolds, then at the table where the certificate was set down again, as if it belonged to no one. The host cleared his throat and moved on with the programme, voice a shade too bright. Names were read. Polite clapping rose and fell. Naomi walked to the edge of the stage and sat with her hands folded, shoes resting on the polished wood. She kept her eyes on the floor and her breathing even. From the seats, her father did not call out. He met her gaze across the glare and gave a small nod that said, "I see you." At the far side near the stairs, a man in a dark suit stood with his arms easy at his sides. He did not clap, he watched. Naomi stayed still. If doubt wanted a show, she would not give it one. The ceremony rolled forward, but for Naomi it was just voices and clapping somewhere far away. She kept her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the gleam of the stage floor. Every so often she caught whispers from the front rows, little glances cast her way before sliding off again. Her father didn't take his eyes off her. He sat still, his jaw tight, like he was holding back every word he wanted to say. Off to the side, the man in the dark suit remained where he was. He didn't fidget, he didn't look at the programme, he only watched, as if each moment on stage mattered to him more than to anyone else in the room. When the last name was called and the final round of applause faded, the host thanked the audience and started to close the ceremony. People shifted in their seats, some standing to get photos, others leaning into the aisles to wave at their kids. Naomi stayed seated. She didn't feel like walking down those steps with nothing in her hands. That's when she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. The man in the suit had started toward the side stairs, his pace unhurried but certain. The sound of his shoes on the wood was soft but carried in the quiet. He reached the stage and stopped just behind the host. Ms. Reynolds turned, her brows pulling together. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice flat. The man's eyes flicked to Naomi, just for a moment before he answered. "Actually," he said, calm but firm, "I think I can help all of us." Ms. Reynolds shifted the stack of certificates in her hands, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Sir, this is a school event. If you have a concern, we can address it later." "I'm not here with a concern," the man interrupted, his voice steady but carrying weight. "I'm here with a correction." That caught the room's attention. Parents turned in their seats. A few students stopped chatting and leaned forward. Naomi's father sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing slightly. The man stepped toward the microphone, pulling a worn leather portfolio from under his arm. "My name is David Coleman," he said clearly, "and I'm the director of the State Scholars Association. I was invited here today as a guest judge to congratulate the winners. But after what I just saw, I can't sit back and say nothing." Naomi's chest tightened. She knew that name. It had been printed at the bottom of every official letter she'd received during the competition season. "You mentioned a possible miscalculation in Naomi Carter's scores," David went on, looking directly at Ms. Reynolds. "There was no miscalculation. In fact, the only mistake was leaving out the fact that she scored higher than every other student in the state." A ripple of gasps swept through the audience. In the second row, Naomi's father let out a slow breath, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. David unzipped the portfolio and pulled out a new certificate, the gold seal catching the light. "Naomi Carter is not just the rightful recipient of the Outstanding Academic Achievement Award," he said. "She is this year's State Scholar Champion, first out of more than 8,000 competitors." Naomi didn't move. She sat frozen in her chair, the words sinking in, feeling the truth land like a steady hand on her shoulder. The room seemed to pause after his words, like even the air had stopped moving. David Coleman stayed at the microphone for a moment longer, letting the truth settle where doubt had been. "We had planned to announce this next week at the state capitol," he said, "but after what I witnessed here today, it belongs to this moment." He stepped away from the podium and walked toward Naomi, holding the gold-sealed certificate with both hands. "You earned this," he told her, his voice low but sure. "Every late night, every problem you refused to give up on, that was all you, and it was never in question." Naomi rose slowly from her seat. The short walk to the centre of the stage felt longer than any she had taken before. She didn't look toward Ms. Reynolds. She kept her eyes on the certificate. When she reached him, David leaned just close enough for only her to hear. "You did this without anyone's permission but your own." Her fingers closed gently around the frame, the cool glass against her palms. "Thank you," she whispered. The applause started soft, scattered, then grew until it filled the room. In the second row, her father stood, clapping with a pride he didn't try to hide anymore. Naomi turned toward the audience, holding the award high enough for the stage lights to catch it. She didn't say a word, she didn't need to. The truth was already written in golden ink. Naomi stepped down from the stage, the award pressed close to her chest as if holding it could steady her heart. Her father was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled her into a hug that was firm and grounding. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her. "I'm proud of you, kiddo. Not because you won, but because you didn't let them break you." Before she could answer, David Coleman joined them. He wasn't smiling for show, there was something genuine in the way he looked at her. "I've seen a lot of bright students over the years," he said, "but the way you held yourself today, that's rare. That's character." Naomi managed a quiet, "Thank you," still sorting through the swirl of relief, pride and disbelief. Around them, the auditorium was beginning to empty. Teachers gathered stray programs, parents guided their kids toward the doors, and the sound of chairs being stacked echoed off the walls. From the corner of her eye, Naomi saw Ms. Reynolds standing off to the side, half hidden behind the podium. Her arms were crossed, her expression tight. Naomi didn't look twice. That moment no longer belonged to her. A pair of friends from her math team hurried over, grinning wide. "We saw everything," one of them said breathlessly. "You didn't even flinch up there. It was incredible." Naomi gave a small laugh, shaking her head. "Trust me," she said. "I felt plenty." They talked for another minute before heading toward the exit, the late afternoon sun spilling through the open doors. Naomi adjusted her grip on the award. It wasn't just a certificate anymore. It was proof. Not of what she could win, but of what she could withstand. The hallway outside the auditorium was calmer, the hum of voices fading behind them. Naomi walked beside her father, the framed award tucked under her arm. They passed the school's trophy case, a mix of dusty relics from decades past and gleaming new plaques from recent victories. For a moment, Naomi caught her reflection in the glass, hair neat, uniform still in place, the gold seal of her certificate catching the light. She allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. Her father noticed. "I've seen you work through problems that would make most people give up," he said. "But staying calm when it would have been easier to fight, that's something else." Naomi's smile softened. "I just didn't want to give them another reason to doubt me." "They didn't need a reason," he replied, his voice steady. "Some people will make one up if it's not there, but you didn't bend. That matters." Near the front doors, Naomi spotted David Coleman speaking quietly with one of the administrators. He looked up, caught her eye, and offered a small wave. She returned it with a nod. Outside, the late afternoon air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass from the football field. A few students milling around glanced at Naomi and gave her a respectful nod. By the time they reached the car, she realised something had shifted. She wasn't replaying the moment she'd been humiliated anymore. She was thinking about the moment she stood back up, and how that was the one that would stay with her. They hadn't planned on stopping, but as they drove down Main Street, her father slowed in front of a small corner diner. The windows glowed warm in the fading light, the neon open sign buzzing faintly. "Hungry?" he asked, glancing at her. Naomi gave a small smile. A little. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and grilled bread. They slid into a booth near the back, the red vinyl seats cracked from years of use. A waitress with kind eyes brought them menus, but Naomi barely looked. "Grilled cheese and tomato soup," she said, and her father chuckled. "Your comfort order," he teased. The food came quickly, steam curling from the soup. They ate in an easy silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Halfway through her sandwich, Naomi looked up. "Dad, what if Mr. Coleman hadn't been there?" He set down his coffee and met her eyes. "Then you'd still be you, smart, steady, mine. An award's nice, but it doesn't make you who you are." She hesitated, then admitted, "It just feels like no one would have believed me." "Maybe not right away," he said, "but the truth has a way of finding its voice. Sometimes it just borrows someone else's for a while." Naomi leaned back, letting his words settle. Outside, the sky had deepened into a soft gold, the streetlights beginning to hum. She realised she didn't feel small anymore. Not because of the certificate resting beside her, but because, in that booth, she felt seen. Monday morning came with the usual rush. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking across the hallway, the faint smell of pencil shavings and cafeteria coffee hanging in the air. Naomi walked in with her backpack slung over one shoulder, the certificate tucked neatly inside a folder. She wasn't here to show it off, but she wasn't hiding it either. As she made her way toward her locker, a few students glanced at her and offered small smiles. One girl from her chemistry class murmured, "Hey, congrats," before hurrying off. It wasn't loud or showy, but it was different. People weren't just looking at her, they were seeing her. She spun the lock on her locker and noticed a shadow in her peripheral vision. Turning, she found Ms. Reynolds standing a few steps away, her hands clasped in front of her. There was no stage now, no microphone, no polite audience to hide behind. "Naomi," Ms. Reynolds began, her voice softer than Naomi had ever heard it. "I wanted to apologise. I should have handled Friday differently." Naomi met her eyes for a long moment. She could have said a lot, about the sting of being doubted so publicly, about the silence she had to hold. But instead, she simply said, "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Ms. Reynolds gave a small nod and stepped aside, letting Naomi pass. As Naomi walked toward her first class, she realised something. She didn't need an apology to reclaim her dignity. She had already taken it back the moment she stepped off that stage with her head high. The week settled back into its usual rhythm, assignments piling up, surprise quizzes in history, and the lunch line moving at its same slow crawl. But for Naomi, something had shifted. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there, steady as a heartbeat. One afternoon, she stayed after school to help set up chairs in the library for the debate team's practice. The building was quiet, except for the faint hum of the vending machine and the shuffle of paper. As she worked, her mind wandered back to Friday, not to the sting of humiliation, but to the moment the truth had been spoken out loud. She remembered the way the room fell silent, the relief on her father's face, the weight of the gold-sealed certificate in her hands. And she realised the part she was most proud of wasn't the win itself. It was how she'd stayed calm when it would have been so easy to lash out. Her debate coach, a warm-voiced history teacher, walked in and smiled. "You seem lighter this week," she said. Naomi gave a small laugh. "Maybe I am." The coach adjusted a chair before replying. "Hold on to that. Moments like this, they don't just show you what other people are made of, they show you what you're made of." Naomi nodded, letting the words settle. She knew she'd carry them, the same way she carried her father's, and for the first time since that day on stage, she felt completely certain about who she was, and no one could take that from her. Friday evening brought a soft, golden light through Naomi's bedroom window. Outside, the sound of kids riding bikes mixed with the hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. From the kitchen came the warm scent of her father's chili. Her backpack lay open on the floor, books spilling out. On the desk sat the framed certificate, catching the last bit of sunlight. She reached out and ran her fingertips over the glass. It wasn't about the paper anymore, it was about everything behind it. The late nights, the quiet persistence, the choice to stand steady when the easy thing would have been to fight. Her father knocked lightly on the doorframe before stepping in. "Dinner's ready," he said, then glanced at the certificate. "Looks good there." Naomi smiled. "Yeah, it does." They ate together at the kitchen table, talking about small things. The neighbour's new puppy, the weather for the weekend, whether pancakes should be breakfast tomorrow. The fullness she felt had nothing to do with the award. It came from sitting across from someone who had believed in her long before anyone else did. Later that night, as she brushed her teeth, Naomi caught her reflection in the mirror. Same brown eyes, same girl, but steadier now, like the ground beneath her feet had grown stronger. The world might try again to question her place, to take something she's earned, to make her feel small. But there was something it couldn't touch, her worth. And that truth was hers to carry, wherever life would take her. True worth isn't defined by others' recognition, but by holding on to your dignity and belief in yourself, even when you're doubted or treated unfairly. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. I'm truly grateful. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time here on Rain Inside.